Yeah, no, Dan, thank you again for coming on. We appreciate your time tonight. This group we just started about a month ago. A lot of us
Yeah.
we want to work in the industry. Some of us already do, and we want to learn from the best. And you're very valuable to the industry, and you're a great resource for Sport Manager Worldwide. And we look forward to hearing from you tonight and what you have to provide to our listeners.
Ryan, I appreciate it. And I like the poster you have over your right shoulder too. You're you're advertising. Good move.
Thank you. Yeah, that's when I played football back in high school. So no, I'd always want to be presentable. So to get things started, Dan, if you can start off, I know you have a lot of experience, working with Major League Baseball teams. You have your own consulting firm. You work with SMWW. In a brief minute or two, can you kind of give us a rundown of, where you started off to where you are today? I know it may take a little more time, but just to give a brief synopsis for people who don't know about you.
Sure. The sound quality and the visual. Okay, can't do much with this face, but the quality is okay, right?
Yeah, we're perfect. Perfect.
Outstanding. Well, I got lucky. I started as a 20-year-old intern looking to get rid of 4 credit hours with sights on being a criminal prosecutor. And that internship, I always laugh, ended up being a 19-year internship. I worked with the White Sox for 19 years, elevated to assistant GM, director of baseball operations. Looking back, I wish I would have left the White Sox earlier. Probably would have been a little more well-rounded. I think one of the problems for all of you, if you stay with one place too long in baseball, you only know one way of doing things. Sure, they turn on the sprinklers a little higher, right? But I was really lucky. I got to live in my hometown, got to work for the White Sox, and then I made a gutsy move. I quit the White Sox. I went to work for the Cubs, where I was their vice president of baseball operations. I ended up working there for 6 months before going to the Dodgers as their GM. I inherited an absolute mess, and that was part of the appeal. I thought if I went there and fixed things, it would help my resume down the line. It would also give me a chance, credibility-wise, in the game. Luckily, we did a really good job. One thing I want to relay to everybody, it's all who you work with and who you work for. Cities are real important. It's important where you wake up. But I had great people working for me in Los Angeles. New owner, with a new owner usually comes change. The guy fired 193 people. I was number 2. To show you how warped he was, he fired the HR person first and then me. Not a good move. Then I went to the Mariners. I worked for the Mariners for 5 years. Had a blast, loved it. Again, picked people to work with, along with a city I adore. Then I was an agent for 5 years, and I'm thrilled that I did that. It really gave me, I would say, a better overall feel of the other side, how they were thinking, what they were doing. Then I went and worked for the Blue Jays for about 6 or 7 seasons as their top evaluator, special assistant to Alex Anthopoulos. And we parted ways at the end of the 18 season, more philosophical than anything. There was new management in place. Alex had left to go to the Braves, different people. I just wasn't into the way they did things. And admittedly, I was okay with not being there anymore. And now I do consulting. I get to have Wednesday nights off and hang out in Boulder with friends and family. And I'm doing consulting for the Field of Dreams movie site as we build a baseball softball complex, added a baseballism store, and we have the game on August 13th. So frankly, I've had a lot of fun. I traveled a lot, very diverse. I've done just about everything in the game, as many of you know that took the class. And I don't think there's anything wrong with being versatile if you're good at being versatile. Being mediocre at being versatile probably shortens your career, but being good at being versatile keeps you relevant, keeps you vibrant, and it gives you opportunities, which I've always felt is the most important thing. The more opportunities I had to impact a place, frankly, the more ability I had and the more options I had. So in short, that's 40 years in about 3 minutes.
Thank you, Dan, for sharing. For those that didn't know, they know more about you now, and that's impressive. 40 years in 3 minutes. That's awesome. So for tonight, I just have a few questions I'm going to ask with our moderators, Andrew and Chris, and then for the last 10 minutes or so, we're going to open it up to the rest of our discussion with our members here, and they're going to ask you a few questions. So for me, just to start off, we all dream of wanting to be a GM, and with your experience, what was the most difficult decision you had to make as a general manager with in your position with the Dodgers, or being in a special assistant or assistant general manager?
The toughest decision. I think the toughest decisions are always the one you're the least prepared for, Ryan. They're usually regarding personnel. I think probably the biggest challenge I had as a general manager was when steroids were so prevalent, PED. And George Mitchell, the former senator, approached me to be part of the Mitchell report. And I realized that all my notes were going to get subpoenaed, and it was going to be a very different transparency to what I'd been doing. But frankly, I was anti-steroid, anti-PED, and it was probably therapeutic to be that transparent. But Ryan, I will say the hardest job you have as a supervisor, and I was talking to a really good friend about this on Saturday, it's managing people and managing their problems and their issues away from the workplace that really requires you to have a humanitarian streak and having an awareness streak that people aren't robots. And if you're good to people, they'll be good to you. The other thing, Ryan, is I never felt people worked for me throughout my career. I thought they worked with me. And as a result, I always tried to be conscious of the contrarian in the room and encourage multiple opinions. I never wanted anybody who was a sycophant. I wanted people who were maybe like-minded, but they didn't have to have my exact philosophy. I enjoyed having people who were different than me from different backgrounds.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that definitely makes a lot of sense. I'm sure a lot of us have heard the same things. Kind of transitioning to another question I have. Due to COVID-19, a lot of us, even yourself, we're kind of all at a halt. We're not sure as to where to go. Even myself, you have different scenarios in your head, but what would be a piece of advice that you can recommend to the individuals on this video chat that you can recommend to them to kind of, have that positive mindset going forward, knowing that there will be opportunities in the future?
Well, Ryan, I'll tell you what, COVID's affected everyone, not just all of you that are looking to get into the game. It's affected every single person, I would say, that are dealing with first world problems. Anyone that works in professional sports has been adversely affected. I mean, I'm here in Boulder. I just went to the farmer's market, and multiple vendors were telling us how things were different. So my advice is pretty simple. When we walk out, when we escape from this, whenever it is, I mean, I don't want to politicize the virus, although my mask says vote. I think it's really important for all of you to recognize that jobs will still be out there. There's still 30 teams trying to win. They may not be hiring right now, but my guess is when the virus concludes at some point in the next, 12 months, whatever it is, I think those of you that are prepared to market yourself will be able to get jobs. And I think what I would do now, and I know I've suggested this in the past in our class, I would connect with the HR person of every team right now. I would get yourself relevant. I would talk to them about what they look for in staff members, but then I would cultivate something that makes you a more unique choice than your competitors, whether it's a blog, whether it's a website, whether it's a Twitter feed or a LinkedIn feed that posts things that are relevant about the game, that makes you appear on the surface to be a little bit more savvy and experienced than perhaps you're bringing to the table right now. Because I think you have to fool people in the new environment that you're not as much of a risk as you actually are. The other thing, Ryan, I would suggest is I would look for people that have good track records for cultivating future executives. People like the Cleveland Indians, people like the Cardinals, the Giants, the Dodgers, the Rays, the Red Sox, the Yankees, the Cubs. I would look for people who mentor well and don't give those, I think there's a lot of BS internships out there. And Ryan, I think the worst thing you can do is work for a logo instead of work for an individual. And I'm not saying this to be the glass 3/4 full. I think you're about to see in the next year the game aggressively try to take advantage of a new workforce and new hires. And I think those of you who are prepared for that are going to reap the benefits.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's great to hear. And I definitely agree with everything you're saying. I think we all, need that sort of, encouragement just because we're, of the unsure times, and we appreciate that. Kind of moving forward, as you were talking about, with all of us wanting to get back in the industry, when all of us are applying or reaching out to teams, is there any suggestions you would have for us? If, some of us have certain prioritizations of like where we can live, or, our financial status, whether we can, we're gonna have to rent an apartment. So I kind of have my own view, but I know everyone else, they may want to work for the Yankees because they, they're contending for the World Series. But, myself, I don't, that's not the way I pictured things. Like for me, I try to be realistic with everything. And I would like to work with a rebuild organization and kind of think along that process.
Mm-hmm.
And then, later in my career, work with a team that contends year to year. So I'm not sure if you can explain a little bit of that to our listeners.
I think it's really important to figure out what you're good at and what motivates you. Because you're not going to make a lot of money in your first job.
Right.
Your first job is your building block. It's your foundation. And it allows you to get your next job. Your entry-level job is probably going to be not as much money as you'd like to make. One thing, Ryan, I would suggest is perhaps the Arizona or Florida operations of each major league club. I think it's one of the kind of hidden jobs in the game. There's probably 5 to 20 jobs in every organization. It's a cheaper way of life because you're either in Arizona or Florida as opposed to some of the big markets. But I think it's really important to not look at that job as what you're going to be doing for the next 10 years.
Right.
I would look at some of the successful people in the game, look where they started and look what they did, but also, and Ryan, I'm just trying to be realistic.
Yeah.
When you're not making a lot of money and you're working long hours, I think it's really important to do something you like to do.
Right.
Because your attitude, tonight I'm with a great friend who oversees a bunch of people. And am I right? It's all about attitude. It's the attitude you bring as an entry-level person that says a lot about your future as a staff member there, but it's the thing everybody remembers about you. If they're going to recommend you to another group, they're not going to talk about the project they did because that's proprietary.
Right.
They're going to say, hey, Ryan's a really good guy. He worked extra hours. I always think if you're going to make a limited amount of money and you're going to be scraping it, invest in yourself a little bit and do something that brings you to the office every day that gives people a positive projection of you, and then use that. You know, one of the hardest things, Ryan, is to invite yourself into meetings, invite yourself to lunch. You know, going up to somebody and say, Ryan, would you mind if I joined you for lunch? You're an intern, you're an entry-level person. But Ryan, if you're the GM, you remember you were an intern once. And if somebody has the guts to come up to you, I've always found I enjoyed people who weren't afraid to come up and say, would you mind if I shadow you for the day or hang out with you for the day or have lunch? That told me that they weren't afraid. But the critical thing is, don't chase a logo or a city. You know, the rebuild, Ryan's a great idea, because if you rebuild well, everybody thinks you're a little bit smarter than you are. You know, you're not making the final decision, but everybody knows you were part of that organization. I mean, that's how I got hired by the Dodgers. We rebuilt twice in Chicago very successfully, and they thought I could do it when I wasn't sure I could do it, but I thought I could. And that's really important. The other thing, Ryan, is this. Your LinkedIn profile, you know, it's got to kick ass. It's got to be really good. It's got to be a good photo with good content, because when they're looking to hire somebody at 10 o'clock at night and they're looking for the options, you don't get to speak for yourself. Your LinkedIn profile does. So for all of you, look me up on LinkedIn, and if you have questions, send me a connection, and I'll throw you some information back.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan, for your thoughts. Last question before we open it for an open forum for the last 10 minutes for discussion. With your experience in the international market, what countries besides the DR do you see teams acquiring talent from? Like, we know the Shohei Ohtanis, we you know, you Darvishes, we know about that, but what is there other countries from your experience on the Pacific Rim that you would think may expand in the future?
Taiwan's going to explode. China. I think China's the next. I think it's the next hotbed of baseball. You have 3 billion people, and the game is becoming relevant there. There's 5 Major League Baseball academies. For me, Curacao, the Netherlands, and I think Germany. I also think South Africa is going to explode. And, you know, finally for me, I think, you know, Japan. Japan is so close to the big leagues now. And with the WBC being a real prevalent and exciting thing with the Olympics next year in Yokohama, I think more players than ever before are going to be playing in Japan. So those are the markets I would cultivate if I were any of you.
Awesome. Yeah. And I'm not sure how much you've been watching the KBO, but with the KBO, as we're able to see on ESPN,
I watched it about 2 hours last night. Yep.
Yeah. I think they're comparing it to like AA from what I've heard. I'm not exactly sure if that's correct. But you know, we see Dan Straley, we see other athletes, you know, from that played in the major leagues, and now they're going, you know, and developing in other countries, and then they're getting a 2-3 year contract with a big league club. So do you see a lot more of that happening as well?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. And you know what, Ryan, I would suggest something for anybody on this call tonight. Follow me on Twitter. I'm at Dan Evans 108, and follow who I follow. It's cheating, but it's information. You know, I follow people that I think can help me. I follow people on LinkedIn that I think can help me. I follow groups. I follow influencers. I've had plenty of job opportunities as a result. And it's a great way of art.
I think we may have lost Dan for a minute there.
I'm back, Ryan. I'm back.
No problem.
I just lost you for a second there.
No problem.
But I think what you have to do is you have to cultivate your following. You have to do that. And the other part is I think the game is going global. 38% of players on 60-man rosters right now are international. And that's just going to grow even further. I think it's going to become more of a college game. The other thing I would say to all of you, look at the collegiate summer leagues as a work opportunity. It's a great way to get early experience in your career. You interact with a lot of people you ordinarily wouldn't, and it forces you to mature and interact with a lot of people from different backgrounds over a very short period of time. The connections you gain are immeasurable.
Awesome, Dan. Thank you so much. So now we're going to transition into questions. So I'm going to open it to the floor. We
Yeah.
have about 8 minutes or so before Dan has to go. So if we can
I
get,
appreciate that.
you're welcome. We have, if we can get questions from, 1 or 2 people just to be considerate of Dan's time, that'd be greatly appreciated. So just unmute your mic, whoever wants to ask Dan a question, and be happy to hear from you guys.
Thanks for doing this, Dan. Nice beard, by the way, as I was saying before.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. I think when you took the class, I was clean shaven, right?
Clean shaving, yes, I remember, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's up?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, make a comment and ask a question. Like, there is a reason why you're second or third in Dodgers winning percentage. I don't know if you knew that, but there is a reason why. Like, you're very introspective. That's something that we come to admire about you, Mr. Evans. And yeah, my question is that do you remember the conversation we had about Ramon Laureano? I sent you an email. I believe it might have been 2017 winter meetings around that time.
Yes, exactly right.
I was talking in code, but he was the guy I was talking to you about that. He was going to be Rule 5 eligible, and I wanted the Blue Jays at the time to acquire him, but he went to the Athletics. And I just wanted to ask, like, were you particularly high on him? Do you know if the Jays were, or is this something kind of like divulge, or?
It's somewhat proprietary, but I don't work for him anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's about opportunity.
Yeah.
And some players gain a relationship with the local scout in the international market. And I'll give you an example. When I was with the Dodgers, we offered Felix Hernandez more than the Mariners did. But Felix had a relationship with Bob Engel of the Mariners and took less money to sign with the Mariners to go with the relationship, Andrew. It's a relationship sport. So I think what you ultimately have to do in the international market is build a relationship with young players so they feel comfortable playing with you. And you have to give them a feeling that they're going to get to the big leagues quickly with you. Now, I love Laureano. I don't love him as much as I love Vladdy Jr., but I'm a big fan. And one thing that I would suggest to all of you, when you really like somebody as a player, don't be afraid to step out on that player and say, hey, listen, this guy's a difference maker. I really feel that this guy is a guy who can make a difference in our ball club. And convey that to the people internally. The other thing, Andrew, I would say, you said I was introspective. That comes from my first boss. And I'm going to challenge all of you with something that I've done my entire career, still do on an annual basis. I try to pick 3 things a year that I could do better.
Wow.
And I try to work at it. And little by little, I'm improving myself. For instance, during COVID, I decided I was going to pick 2 people a day that I was going to interact with. And I was out, I think it was Saturday afternoon or Sunday, and I bought a bunch of postcards because I was starting to run out of postcards and note cards for the people I've been interacting with. But I'm talking about interpersonal things, work skills, what can I do better work-wise on an annual basis? And Andrew, we're all flawed. We all have things we do well and things we'd like to do better. And I think every year, if you get yourself a little better, right away you're better at what you do and you bring more to the table annually.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. We have about 3 minutes. Does anyone else have any more questions for Dan tonight before we wrap it up?
I have a quick one. Hey, Dan, how you doing? Steven
Now
Martin.
you're working the beard, big boy. That's a bushy beard.
Let it go again. I'm going to give it another few months.
I love it.
Mentioned when looking for an entry level or internship job, not to take the BS job. Can you kind of give a little bit like what you're looking for or what to avoid?
Stephen, I think that's a fabulous question. You don't want a job. You want a job that gets you your next job. So I would ask, and I know it's a hard thing to ask because they're the authority figure, they're the gatekeeper. Ask them, what responsibilities would I have? And who are some of the people that have had this job in the past, and what did they go on to do? The other thing I would say, Stephen, is try to think about what things you're not very good at and whether or not in that job you'll learn those skills to try to round out your skill set a little bit. I really believe, Stephen, something really strongly. I think you pick the mentor, not the job, not the organization. See, like if I had a chance to work for the Kansas City Royals, I would jump at it. If I had a chance to work for the Giants, I would jump at it. I would work for people like Marty Cordero of the Omaha Storm Chasers or John Traub of the Albuquerque Isotopes. People that are gifted people that will bring you in the room. But Stephen, I think the important thing is, you know, when you're at the end of an interview, ask what's expected of you and what skills do you expect me to gain from this work experience? Because if they're just telling you that you're going to be an intern and you're going to do copying and run errands. I mean, I had a friend who worked for a guy who had to wash his car once a week. He ran him errands. He did copies every day, and he got no skills. After about 2 months, he quit because he didn't feel he was investing in himself. See, I think, Stephen, you can only be in one place at one time. You got to pick the thing that's going to derive the most benefit from you. I mean, listen, they're going to use the hell out of you. Whether they pay you or not or give you credit, they're going to use you 12 to 15 hours a day. You can't be an ATM that's all withdrawals and no deposit. So you got to think about, and don't be afraid to ask, what am I going to get out of it? What do you try to give your interns? Because a good organization is going to want to give you skills that make you an attractive employee for them, so they don't have to hire somebody else 6 months from now. And I think that's something a lot of you forget when you're in that difficult position of talking to somebody about a job, trying to impress them. Hey, you know what? They have to impress you too. They've got to give you an opportunity that merits you investing in them for a 6 to 12 month period, or in my case, 19 years. My first job, I was lucky. I had great people, but I had great people who were willing to mentor me.
Awesome, Dan. Thank you so much. I know, due to time constraints, Dan he has other plans tonight as well. So Dan, thank you so much for coming on tonight. Hope you have a great night with your friends, and hopefully we stay in touch and you can come back on soon.
You got it. For all of you, Ryan, just real quickly,
yeah,
connect with me on LinkedIn, connect with me on Twitter. If you have questions, reach out to me. But here's the important thing. You're already doing a great job from an entrepreneurial standpoint, doing what all of you are doing. Cultivate this and make this a positive step for all of you. You're already a step ahead of a lot of your competitors, but don't stop here. Keep working at it. You're going to find all of you are going to be a little bit of a cocooned comfort level. You're growing up in the game accordingly. Don't be afraid to share those experiences with all of you. Here's a for instance. Let's say, Chris, you know about a job, but you're not qualified for it. Tell everybody else in the group. And then somebody's going to look out for you because you're a team player. That's just how these things work. And it really does. It's a great sport. It's a lot of fun. I wish all of you the best. And candidly, thanks for inviting me in. A lot of you are alums, and I'm rooting for you. So reach out to me, and I'll help you some more. Good luck, everybody.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you.
Dan.
Have a good night.
Bye, guys.
All right, thanks, guys. I'm going to stop the recording now. We can just talk for like the last 20 minutes, all right?
I'm Gifting Gope, Major League Baseball player.
Please support international baseball by subscribing to CBO TV.